lest we forget. Autor, Mauricio Umaña Núñez. Lest we forget. Peter Paul von Bauer, A Visionary of the Skies, From the Amazon Jungle to the Colombian Air Empire. By Mauricio Umaña Núñez. Copyright. Copyright laws protect this work. Any reproduction, in whole or in part, without the express consent of the authors is prohibited. 2025. Mauricio Umaña and Manuela Umaña. Dedication. To those who guarded his memory, so that the legacy of the visionary, reborn from the jungle and who drew the map of a nation from the skies, may once again soar through the skies of history. Acknowledgements. Creating a work of this magnitude always involves a collective effort, nourished by the generosity and knowledge of many. It is my duty and pleasure to express my gratitude to those who made this book possible. My deepest gratitude goes to the direct descendants of Peter Paul von Bauer, Christina Zehner von Bauer and her son Stefan Broda Zehner. They generously opened their personal and family archives, a treasure trove of documentation and photographs that has brought these pages to life. My thanks also go to my colleague and vice president of the Colombian Academy of Air History, Jaime Escobar Corradine, whose expertise and generosity have been a constant guide throughout countless research sessions. I would also like to thank Manuel Arango Echeverri for his willingness to share his collections, which have been an invaluable source of consultation and discovery. My gratitude also goes to my daughter, Manuela Umaña, co-author of this work, for her tireless dedication and for providing the unwavering support that enables us to undertake such arduous tasks. My thanks also go to the family archive at Kunin Castle, Zamek Kunin, custodian of the crucial correspondence between brothers Peter Paul and Victor. Without this correspondence, an essential part of this story would have remained untold. My gratitude extends to Professor Sven Schuster for all the material he has shared, and for the information we were able to extract from his magnificent work on the aviator Hermann Fellner of the scientific section, A Vista de Pájaro. Finally, I would like to thank all those who assisted in this research in one way or another. Your contribution, whether large or small, has been fundamental. Prologue. Engineer, academic and author Mauricio Umaña has judiciously and methodically scoured archives, universities and museums, seeking, researching and translating countless documents to support this book. This is what gives this work its historical importance. Commercial aviation in Colombia began in 1919, with the establishment of the country's first air transport companies. However, it was not until the arrival of the Austrian-born investor Peter Paul von Bauer in 1921 that it began to develop. I have dedicated many years to investigating this figure alongside Mauricio and disseminating his work. There is no doubt that von Bauer's intellect and educational framework extended far beyond the geology and geography he studied in Germany. He first visited Colombia in 1911, exploring the most remote regions of the country, from Barranquilla and Bogotá to the remote areas of the Orinoquia and Amazonia. He became one of the country's most knowledgeable explorers, earning comparisons to the renowned Baron Alexander von Humboldt, who had visited and studied our territory a century earlier. Upon becoming the majority shareholder of the Colombo-German Air Transport Society SCADTA, von Bauer recognized the potential of this new commercial activity. First, he established a regular airmail service between Colombia's main port of Barranquilla and Girardot in the interior of the country, followed by passenger transport. Secondly, he established SCADTA's scientific section, developing innovative activities such as aerial photography and exploring new routes. The company also ventured into additional businesses, such as transporting securities and precious minerals from the mines in Chaco to the Atlantic and Pacific ports. Supported by government contracts, this array of activities propelled the company to profitability and success, establishing it as a global benchmark for efficiency. One of his most decisive moves was the early adoption of Junkers F-13 seaplanes designed by Professor Hugo Junkers in Dessau, Germany. Junkers closely monitored SCADTA's operations and the performance of his aircraft, which were modified for tropical conditions. In 1925, an exploratory flight from Colombia to the United States via Central America was planned and executed with the potential of the airmail business in mind. This flight, planned by von Bauer, undoubtedly raised concerns within the U.S. government, resulting in the establishment of Pan American Airways. This new company would go on to dominate the skies of Latin America and the Caribbean. However, the most striking aspect of von Bauer's career was the expertise he acquired in managing his company. This enabled him to establish a regulatory framework for the emerging commercial aviation industry. He advised the Colombian Commission led by Dr. Enrique Olaya Herrera, who was then Minister Plenipotentiary to the Washington government, at the Pan American Convention on Civil Aviation during the 6th International Conference in Havana in 1928. At von Bauer's recommendation, Colombia presented essential topics such as air sovereignty, aircraft classification, postal and passenger aviation, and standardizing regulations. Furthermore, the air policy documents that von Bauer delivered to Herrera upon his assumption of the Colombian presidency in 1930 shaped the future of the country's aviation industry regarding routes, infrastructure and technology. In 1932, during the conflict with Peru, von Bauer did not hesitate to support his friend's government, placing his company SCADTA at its disposal, and advising on the creation of the military aviation branch, its airbase infrastructure, and its organization. In 1940, instigated by the U.S. ambassador, von Bauer was accused and persecuted by the government. He left the country and never returned. The time has come to bring Peter Paul von Bauer, this great adopted Colombian, back into the public discourse, and to restore and commemorate his work and legacy in advancing the aviation industry during the first half of the 20th century, not only in Colombia but worldwide. For this reason, the work you now hold in your hands, written by Mauricio Umaña, seeks precisely to rescue from oblivion this pioneer of aviation in Colombia and South America. Throughout its pages, he delves with the dedication and rigor that characterize him into the historical moments I have outlined, and reveals many others that are crucial to understanding the magnitude of his legacy and the need to restore his memory. I am sure the reader will enjoy this journey of rediscovery as much as I have. Jaime Escobar Corradine, Vice President of the Colombian Academy of Air History. Introduction. The dream of conquering Colombia's skies, the history of civil aviation in Colombia, and by extension much of Latin America, cannot be fully understood without considering the pivotal role of Dr. Peter Paul von Bauer. His name, which in its fullest form became Peter Paul Ritter von Bauer-Rorfelden, evokes a noble lineage of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. However, it was his indomitable spirit of adventure, and his vision, which transcended the frontiers of his time, that established him as a titanic personality. His biography is inextricably intertwined with technological development, the exploration of vast uncharted territories, and Colombia's progress. This book explores the life of this pioneer, from his origins in the industrial aristocracy of Brno, the capital of Moravia, and his studies in geology and geography at prestigious universities in Munich and Darmstadt, to his pivotal role as the driving force behind the Colombo-German Air Transport Society, SCADTA. During his first scientific expedition to northwestern Colombia between 1911 and 1913, sponsored by the Royal Geographical Society of London, he realized the importance of aerial photography. The intricate mountain ranges, plains, and jungles of Colombia revealed to him that aviation would be more than just a mode of transport, it would be an essential tool for the nation's knowledge, integration, and defense. Upon returning to the Americas in 1920, von Bauer found that SCADTA was barely getting started and, in need of a budget, investing the remaining scarce capital from his family's fortune, he became Director General. He steered the company towards aerial photography and topography, while never losing sight of its mission, to operate a regular passenger and mail service. By 1924, under his leadership, SCADTA had not only become profitable, but it also expanded boldly, setting global precedents in the aerophotographic delimitation of borders. However, his path was marked by the turbulent events of the 20th century. The onset of the Second World War, the United States' strategic interest in the Panama Canal, and Pan American Airways (PA. Growing influence would drastically alter the airline's destiny. Secret negotiations, intense pressure for the de-Germanization of Colombian aviation, and von Bauer's subsequent persecution and exile are testimony to the formidable challenges he faced. This book, therefore, seeks to provide a profound insight into the life of Peter Paul von Bauer. Ultimately, he was a pioneer whose intellect, passion, and exceptional work ethic left an indelible mark on the history of aviation and the skies of Colombia. Chapter 1. Aristocratic Origins, and the Forging of an Expeditionary Spirit. Peter Paul von Bauer's extraordinary trajectory can be traced back to his origins in the heart of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, within an industrial elite that had ascended to the nobility. His lineage not only bestowed upon him a title but also an intellectual foundation and a cultivated spirit. Together with his unwavering will, these would predispose him for the great enterprises that would define his life. Origins in Brno, a crucible of cultures. Peter Paul von Bauer was born on December 3, 1888 in Brno in Czech, the historic capital of Moravia, and at the time, one of the most vibrant cities in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Brno was not merely his birthplace, it was an environment that profoundly shaped the von Bauer family's identity, the second largest city in the present-day Czech Republic. It was an industrial hub connected by rail to Vienna since 1839 and was known as the Austrian Manchester. A predominantly German-speaking center, surrounded by largely Czech-speaking suburbs, the city was a microcosm of the empire. By 1900, 63% of its population was German-speaking. Life was bilingual, resulting in a local dialect known as Brunerisch, which blended both languages. In this cultural melting pot, the family identified as German-speaking Moravians, adopting a cosmopolitan perspective forged in a city that hosted multiple universities and a sizable Jewish community of around 12,000 people. Tragically, decades later, this Germanic heritage would lead to the violent expulsion of the German-speaking population from the city after the Second World War in an event known as the Brunn Death March. The family legacy from industrialists to Ritter von Bauer. The family fortune was consolidated by Moritz Ritter von Bauer, the grandfather of the family's patriarch. Building upon the foundations laid by his father, Aaron Bauer, Moritz founded the Alt-Brunner Zucker Refinery sugar refinery in 1850, which became the cornerstone of their business empire. In recognition of his contributions, Emperor Franz Joseph I granted Moritz the hereditary title of Ritter Knight in 1870. The family motto, inscribed on their coat of arms, was Labor ad honorem, by labor to honor. His father, Victor Ritter von Bauer, continued the family's involvement in the sugar business and further solidified their aristocratic status by acquiring the castles of Kunin and Spalov. As well as being an active politician, he was a notable cattle breeder. Peter Paul was the youngest of three brothers who followed very different paths. The eldest, Dr. Victor von Bauer-Rohrfelden, was a cosmopolitan intellectual, pilot and mystical thinker who staunchly opposed Nazism. The second, Moritz Klumecki Bauer, was a patron of the arts in Vienna who fled into exile in Australia to save his children from the Nazi infection. Grief and departure, a course set for the unknown. A crucial event shaped young Peter Paul's destiny. In 1911, within months of each other, he lost both his father Victor and his mother Marietta. This personal tragedy, compounded by difficulties with the family inheritance in Brno, drove him to seek new horizons. In December of that year, aged just 23, he set out on his first expedition to Colombia. The solid academic training he received in geology and geography at the universities of Munich and Darmstadt would prove invaluable in the future. In his personal life, he married Charlotte Scharf Heidemann on March 15, 1915. They had one daughter, Marietta von Bauer, and he also adopted Edgar, Charlotte's son from a previous marriage, who tragically died during the Second World War. The Amazon expedition, an encounter with the white spot on the map, the true turning point in his life was his first journey to Colombia between 1911 and 1913. He joined a large-scale scientific expedition sponsored by the Royal Geographical Society of London, and led by the renowned Dr. Alexander Hamilton Rice, a geographer from Harvard University. The objective was to map the northwestern Amazon, a vast area that appeared on maps as an enigmatic white spot. The expedition set off from London in December 1911. After arriving in Barranquilla, he traveled up the Magdalena River to Bogotá. In the eastern plains, he contracted severe malaria, leaving him bedridden for months. The expedition then continued along the Ariari River, where von Bauer experienced the hardships and dangers of the jungle, firsthand, interacting with indigenous tribes such as the Guahabos. He recorded his experiences in a meticulous diary written in German. Writing nostalgically to his brother Victor from the jungle, he said, "My imagination pictured the smoking room in Kunin. I saw you with black coffee and a cigarette, and would love to hear what you were saying." He returned a changed man, leaving a famous inscription in one of the family castles, "Reborn from the jungle, Peter." One significant encounter was with Gregorio Calderón, a rumbero or rubber explorer. Years later, Calderón recounted his fascinating life to von Bauer in a narrative that resonated with José Eustacio Rivera's The Vortex La Voragine. Von Bauer considered him perhaps the greatest jungle pioneer Colombia had ever produced. The Amazon in von Bauer's academic and literary consciousness. His intense immersion in the Amazon jungle laid the groundwork for his scholarly output. After participating in the First World War, an experience which resulted in significant financial losses, he channeled the results of his expedition into his doctoral thesis in geography, successfully defending it at the University of Munich in 1919. Much later, during his exile in Chile in 1944, he published The Northwestern Amazon Jungle in the Age of Rubber, Memories and Commentaries on La Voragine, by José Eustacio Rivera. In this essay, he placed his experiences in dialogue with the celebrated novel, perceiving Rivera as a kindred spirit. His writing is a valuable source for understanding the issue of territoriality and the absence of the state in Colombia's vast borderlands. The seed of the aerophotographic vision, the intricate mountain ranges, impenetrable jungles, and slowness of land transport led Peter Paul von Bauer to a transformative conclusion: the imperative need for aerial photography exploration. His experiences showed him that aviation was not just a means of transport, but an essential tool for gaining comprehensive knowledge of the territory, integrating its regions, and defending national sovereignty. This epiphany, born in the depths of the Amazon, drove him to return to Colombia not just as an explorer but as an architect of the sky.